you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave.
Thank you, Kyron. Thank you. Thank you. Woo! How y'all doing? Well, I tell you what, let me catch my breath. Okay. We are the Crispy Warriors. We are a group of, right now we're about 60. We're a group that meets here in Destin every Thursday morning at Crackings, a breakfast place just down the road. And every Thursday morning, we begin our breakfast with a word of prayer, and then we say the Pledge of Allegiance. We're a group of men that love the Lord and love our country. And there are no rules. We're just an ad hoc group. So we have been privileged to be on this stage a few times. This may be our third time, I think. And the last time we honored one of our own. And that man is on the end of this row, Bill McCowan. Bill McCowan has the distinction of being 92 years old, and but he really has the distinction of having the most combat missions as an Air Force pilot in the history of the Air Force, in the history of our nation. This man flew 697 combat missions. Can you even wrap your arms around that? Now, tonight though is about a different gentleman. It's about a gentleman whose life is unlike any other life here. And this man is, 6 months shy of his 100th birthday. And his name is John Beard. And John, I'm going to ask you to kind of wave your hand. This is John Beard. A remarkable man. And I've got some notes here that I'll try to follow. Now think about it, he's about to turn 100. When he was born in December of 1918, that was a month after the armistice was signed for the end of World War I. And it was 15 years after the Wright brothers made that historic flight at Kitty Hawk. Now, John's upbringing was tough. By the age of 4, he lost his parents. He was sent to an orphanage. This was in the western part of West Virginia. And from the age of 4 until the age of 13, he was in this orphanage. There were 100 kids in the orphanage, and John, being John, wanted to do something kind of neat, kind of special, and that was run away from the orphanage nobody ever had, and then come back. Well, he ran away from the orphanage, but he couldn't come back because he was in jail in Baltimore. Now, anybody here 13 or close to it? What is your name? I can't hear that. Mariana? Ariana. I was in the field artillery and I lost my hearing long ago, but Ariana, everybody look at Ariana. That's what a 13-year-old looks like, okay? So picture John Beard, 13 years old, and what he did is he ran away, and with every intention of going back to the orphanage, but you know, he kind of wanted to make this interesting, so he hopped a freight train. He didn't know where it was going, and when he finally got off, it was in Baltimore. So he, many hours later, you know, from West Virginia, gets off the train and is apprehended by the police. And the police, you know, this 13-year-old, what are you doing on this? So he gives his sad speech about being an orphan, and you may have even shed a tear. And well, the police called the orphanage, and the orphanage said, yeah, he was here, but we do not want him back. And that began for him 6 years of being a hobo. And that's a story that we can't get into tonight, but for 6 years, from age 13 to age 19, he was hopping trains, staying in hobo jungles, is what you call them, right? Hobo jungles. He said outside of every town that had a railroad running through it, there would be a hobo jungle. But this was in the Depression, the Great Depression. And it wasn't a case of a lot of people, a lot of men not wanting to work. There just wasn't any work. And the older men made good use of John because, you know, being as young as he was, people took pity on him. And so he was the one that would go up the doors and beg for food, and he did, and he survived. Now, by the time of 1940, John is wanting to have a real job. So he goes to the Navy recruiting office, and they say, yeah, we'd love to have you. The commitment is 6 years. And he said, well, I don't think I want that long. And so he goes to the Army, and the commitment there was less, and he says, yeah, I'll do that. And the recruiter says, well, you know, actually, let's fill out these you know, these forms. I got to fill out this form here, and did you complete college? Now, backing up a little bit, by age 13, when he leaves the orphanage, he has finished grade school, but that's it. And to this day, that's it. And what he accomplished with "that's it" is amazing. And so he says no, and the recruiter asked, well, how many years did you finish? And he said, well, none. And the recruiter said, well, you did graduate from high school, didn't you? And John's answer would define the rest of his life. So he kind of looks the recruiter in the eye and, you know, real innocent like, and says, well, doesn't everybody? And the recruiter said, yeah, okay, and checks yes on the form, and the rest is history. The next day, because the recruiter said, we are forming what we're calling the Army Air Corps, and we need pilots and mechanics. And you're going to be an enlisted man, we're going to make you a mechanic. And so he goes off to mechanic school, and when he finishes that, he reports to a duty station, and somebody says, you see that plane over there? That's your plane. You're going to be the crew chief. And you know what that plane was? It was a T6. A T6. Am I hurting you with this? Okay, it was a T6, which, now, does this work? Right down here. Well, why didn't you tell me before? Okay, good. Yeah. You know, I wasn't enjoying this at all, but now I can. Okay, so a T6 is that plane that's going to fly over us at the end of this program. Okay, and in about 5 minutes. So we're going to make this quick. So he's a mechanic for a while, and you know, he moves along in the enlisted ranks and becomes a sergeant. And there goes out this call for more pilots. We need more pilots. There weren't enough officers to fill the slots. And so, believe it or not, there were a lot of sergeant pilots recruited, and John was one of them. And he passed the training and became a pilot. And it seemed like throughout his career, his superiors were pushing him forward, because apparently, I think as a hobo, he matured very quickly, and he was just seen as an outstanding intellect and individual. So he is made a co-pilot of the B-25 Billy Mitchell bomber. B-25, you may recall, there were 16 of those that flew off the Hornet with Colonel Jimmy Doolittle for the Tokyo raid, and that was John Beard's aircraft. But he started out as a co-pilot, and you know, quickly he's over in North Africa. And in North Africa, he distinguishes himself by saving a crewman on a particular flight. And coming back, his senior officer said, well, I tell you what, I can give you a Silver Star, or I can give you command of your own aircraft. And he said, I want command of my own aircraft. And he got command. He got a battlefield promotion to be an officer, second lieutenant. 3 months later, he's made a captain. And that was a result of having, again, performed a very, very heroic action that takes a while to explain, and got his first, not his only, but his first Distinguished Flying Cross for heroism. So he finishes 35 tours, combat tours, or missions, missions, and with that, in World War II, you could head back to the States. And but John says, well, I don't know that I want to do that. Nobody back there. I think I'll stick around, and he did. And he flew another 35 missions, this time in Italy. And then they moved his bomber group to the China, Burma, India theater. And they said, John, you can go home a second time. And he said, no, I think I'll stick around. And so he went to the CBI and finished a final tour. And, you know, the rest really is history. I want to bring him up. He finishes the war with additional medals for heroism. He has finished 3 complete combat tours, and he goes on for 25 years as an Air Force aviator, some very unique, demanding assignments, concluding with some secretive work in Vietnam. And he retired in 1965, and upon his retirement, he retired right here in Shalimar, Destin, Shalimar on the other side of the bridge there, and for 45 years was a broker with A.G. Edwards, making people money. And finally retired in 2010. And he's accompanied by his daughter, Carrie. Carrie, would you stand and just smile? And John has 2 great sons, or wonderful sons, a granddaughter, and his wife, Gwen, could not make it tonight. She's had an operation and she's healing. She's doing well. I talked to her. By the way, ladies out there, you're going to love this man because he's been married to the same woman for 73 years. Isn't that wonderful? Now I tell you what. Do y'all want to hear from a man who's almost 100 years old? Oh, yeah. Well, John, you know, let them know what a man that's almost 100 years old sounds like.
Hello there.
No, I'm going to let you hold that.
Oh.
What do you want to share with this group?
I hope this thing works. Yeah, I could have told that story much quicker than that. And my version of my time in World War II was the only pilot to get a battlefield commission and the only idiot to fly 3 consecutive combat tours in World War II. Now, I flew airplanes all around this world for 25 years and through a couple of wars, and nobody ever called me a pilot. But I wrote a couple of poems, and now everybody calls me a poet. So I think it's time right now that I'm going to give you a poem about that ragged old flag. I walked into that county courthouse square, and on a park bench an old man was sitting there. I said, your courthouse is sort of run down. And he said, it'll still do for this small town. And I said, that flagpole is leaning a bit, and that's a ragged old flag you got hanging on it. He said, have a seat, Sonny. And I sat down. He said, is this the first time you've been to our little town? I said, yes. And he said, well, I don't like to brag, but we're rather fond of that ragged old flag. You see, it has a hole in it there. That was happened when Washington was crossing the Delaware. And that rip, that happened down in New Orleans with Packingham and Jackson a-tugging at its seams. And it almost fell at the Alamo alongside the Texas flag, but it didn't though. It got cut by a sword at Chancellorsville, cut again at Shiloh Hill. And then there was Robert E. Lee, Beauregard, and Bragg. You know, that south wind blew hard on that ragged old flag. On Flanders Field in World War I, it took a hole from a big Bertha gun. And it turned blood red in World War II. It hung low and limp before that one was through. And it was in Korea and Vietnam. It went where it was sent by its Uncle Sam. And it waved from our ships on the briny foam. There's been times when some folks quit waving it here back home. And in its own good land, it's been abused, it's been burned, dishonored, denied, and refused. And the very government which it stands is scandalized throughout the land. Now, I know it's getting a little threadbare and it's wearing thin, but it's still in pretty good shape. Pretty good shape for the shape it's in. It's been through the fire before, and I'm sure it can stand a whole lot more. So we raise it up every morning, we bring it down at night, it never touches the ground, and we fold it up right. You know, on second thought, Sonny, I think I will brag, because I'm mighty damn proud of that ragged old flag. Thank you. Thank you for coming.
The T6 Texan had many nicknames, including the Pilot Maker, Old Growler, the Widowbreaker, and the Mosquito.